privilege of engaging in a conversation with an individual who has been deeply entrenched in the world of technology for over 4 decades, with an impressive portfolio boasting more than 25 patents in his name and the distinguished experience of engaging with none other than Bill Gates himself. His journey is nothing short of awe-inspiring. A very warm welcome to none other than Mr. Sanjeev Kuwadekar, founder and CEO of Infogen Labs. Without further ado, let's delve into the fascinating story of his life and achievements. Hi, Sanjeev, and welcome to the first episode of Beyond the Workstation. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. Before I dive into the million questions that I have, we would actually like to hear about your journey and your life from your own words.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Priyanka. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'm glad to be here. Let me start from the very beginning. I started my journey in this space, in this very, very exciting space, almost 40 years ago. And actually, there was no course in computer science that time. So I graduated from IIT Bombay in a related field, electronics and electrical engineering, and learned quite a bit about the hardware that time. And then I decided to switch on to software, and so I did my master's in computer science, mainly focusing on the software. And I specialized in artificial intelligence and natural language processing that time. So nobody had heard about artificial intelligence. It was only in books, it was only in theory. Glad that after about 40 years now it's becoming a reality. We actually did quite a bit innovative work that time on natural language processing, but again, the computing power was not there. And now with the cloud technology and a lot of computing power, things like ChatGPT has become a reality. But I
Right.
started on that almost 40 years ago. And then I joined Tata's in mid 80s, did quite a few projects. And then they actually put me on a project in California for their parent organization, Unisys Corporation. And I led a team of 7, 8 programmers to develop something similar to Microsoft Windows on their microcomputers. And that was an exciting project. Uh, Multi-million lines of C code at that time. And yeah, and then Microsoft actually hired me after that, since I had worked on something similar, and then joined Microsoft back in 1990. And then I was actually second or third employee, I believe, in the Western region. And the whole idea was to work with Fortune 500 companies, work with the CIOs of large enterprises, and make sure that when they use Microsoft products, the architecture is done properly, and then the projects are conducted properly, kind of show the success of Microsoft Enterprise product suite. And so I
Right.
was one of the principal consultants there. And so I got a lot of consulting experience during that time. And after about 10 years, I decided to leave Microsoft and start my own company. This was back in 2000. And with 2 other Microsoft employees, started a company called Hey Anita, which was
Okay.
in the speech recognition technology space.
Right.
So now I think everybody uses Alexa and Siri, but we developed this almost 23 years ago. And I raised venture funding because any product company, you need some funding. So I
Right.
worked with companies like SoftBank and Intel and raised about $40 million in venture funding between Series A, B, and C. And then I ran the company for about 6 years as the CEO. I made it profitable in 2 years. Uh, so the headquarters of the company was in Los Angeles, but then we started offshore development center in Pune. Vinod, who is now running India operations, so he joined us that time as one of our engineers, senior engineer and the team lead here in Los Angeles, and he wanted to move back to India. So everything worked out very, very well, and he moved back to India to take care of our Pune office. So it
Okay.
was the main focus was product development. We did some very, very innovative products in Pune that time. Worked with two large wireless carriers, Verizon Wireless and Sprint in the US. Did a nationwide rollout. Started an office in England. Did
Oh, wow.
similar thing with Vodafone UK. Started
Okay.
a joint venture with SK Telecom in South Korea and rolled out that technology in Korean language in Korea.
Wow.
And then we had a partnership with Wipro in India,
Okay.
and they actually got us some business in South Asian countries. So pretty exciting times. And then after 6 years, sold that company to another company because again. When I started the company, smartphones were not there. So the whole idea was to use speech recognition technology to
Mm.
bring the internet information so people can actually access that using voice. Uh,
Right.
when the smart when the smartphones came along, sort of people started using smartphone browsers to get that information. So it was the right timing. So sold a company. Actually, as part of that company, I wrote, I believe, about 10 patents.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I think I, if I remember, like voice SMS, which was at one point a big thing, uh, I wrote patent on that. So I was the
Okay.
inventor of that technology. And then started another company in online advertising technology space called Media Shift.
Okay.
Raised $22 million in funding, rolled out that technology. The whole idea was last mile advertising.
Okay.
So when you are at the airport or when you are in a hotel, and when you connect to internet, you
Mm.
actually see the advertisements when you are browsing internet,
Okay.
about the instead of seeing the advertisements that don't make sense to you, you get advertisements of the nearby restaurants or nearby coffee shops, right?
Right.
uh,
Okay.
so that was the idea. So that company, I was there for about 7 or 8 years. We rolled out the technology in 3,000 hotels,
Wow.
18 to 20 airports in the country, and then I sold my shares back to the investors. And every time I did that, I decided to keep India office because we had some very talented engineers, didn't want to let them go, didn't want Vinod to, to go somewhere. So I retained that
Right.
office. And then in 2017, actually, technically founded Infogen Labs, right? And then you know
Okay.
everything about Infogen Labs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I am actually very happy to have joined Infogen. I get to meet so many new people. In fact, like you said, 40 years back, you said that time AI was, I mean, I don't even know if anyone had even, I don't even know who had thought about it, very honestly. Like, even today, when I go to office and, our AR VR team, when I go there and I have also put on the VR glass and I've gone to the, I don't know, 38th floor or something. And the reality of it is very interesting to actually be that high. Like, one of my colleagues was so scared that she removed the goggles. She's like, no, no, it's too high for me. I'm like, you're right here. It's not high, but it
Yeah.
is so realistic. But so those many years ago, like, how did you think of getting into it? I mean, how did you come across AI? What brought you to it?
Yes. Yeah, good question. I mean, people had heard about AI. It was sort of upcoming technology. And I mean, it was still kind of research phase, right?
Right.
There were various models. You may not even have heard of some of the languages that we used, like, that time.
Right.
There were languages like Lisp and Prolog, like programming languages for AI programming. But it
Okay.
was mainly like a research phase. There were no commercial systems. But I kind of realized that, look, this is the future, right? I mean, this is like creating human brain, right?
Right.
So I think it was more of that. And for masters, we had to actually do some research projects and write thesis. So I
Okay.
decided to write thesis on something called language acquisition system, which is how the human brain works. See, we don't learn grammar like as kids. We
Right.
just correlate words, right? We learn words from our parents.
Right.
We observe, listen, and
Correct.
then we correlate those words, and that's how we form sentences, right?
Right.
So it was more of kind of doing something similar, A lot of people were trying to do natural language processing using grammars, and that's not how
Okay.
human brain works, right? So
Right.
that's what I did in my project, right? It was called a paradigmatic language acquisition system, and we actually created a programming language and wrote a compiler for that language. So it was pretty exciting project.
Wow, that sounds
Yeah.
like a lot of work, but very interesting. So, as you mentioned, you were working with basically a dream company for many. I mean, Microsoft is a dream company, right? So, we want to know what made you venture out on your own. Like, was there something that inspired you? Or what made you start Infogen Labs? And also, a tangent of that question is that why did you name it Infogen Labs?
Good question again. Yes, Microsoft. Actually, I loved Microsoft. When I joined Microsoft, that was a dream company. It was a relatively small company, right? I
Right.
believe when I joined, maybe 2,000 people. I joined their office in Los Angeles, and I
Okay.
think there were only 8 or 10 people, not
Oh
more
my
than
God.
that. To an extent that when Bill Gates visited, right, there were only 8 of us there.
Wow.
For our sales meetings, you know, had a fortune to meet him personally and talk to him.
Right.
So it was a very small company atmosphere that time, and again, no bureaucracy. We could call anyone, get answers, even in the product groups, right? It was a lot of fun. And then also Microsoft, at that point, they started releasing products every 6 months. So a lot of innovative products came out of Microsoft during that 10-year period. Pretty exciting. And we were all ready to go out and kill the competition, right? Nobody considered Microsoft as a product company that time. I mean, all that they had when I joined was Windows 3.1,
Wow.
and they didn't have the credibility that they have today in the enterprise market, and that was our job, right?
Right.
Everybody that time they were using IBM products, and so exciting time period, 10 years, just going out there and pushing Microsoft products and competing with Oracle and IBM and getting business from them. It was a really definitely a cool time. Then what happened after 10 years is it became too big, right? 50, 60, 70,000 people, a lot of policies, and it was no longer fun, right? I like
Right.
working with smaller companies. I like working with innovative products. I like
Right.
working when the products come out every 6 months and not every 2 to 3 years, right? And so that's when I decided to start my own.
Nice.
And the
Right.
second question I think you asked was, why did I call it Infogen?
Yes.
And yeah, because I think if you look at the computing space today, it's all about how you take that data, right? Data science has become a big thing now. How do
Right.
you take that data and create information out of that data, right? So
Right.
data is just data, raw data. Now, creating information is something that people can use to make decisions, run business, make it more efficient, right? So it was all about how do we kind of work with the IT companies to generate the information that they need in order to make their business more efficient. So that's why I called it Infusion.
That is an excellent thought process, actually. I don't think my head would have even gone there, that Infogen Labs has come from there. So it's quite interesting to know. Okay. So basically, you have been in the industry for, I think, more than 40 years now, which is quite a bit. And I want to know how did you get into like your business, in terms of what is there something that influenced you or someone that influenced your life the most to keep going this long with innovative ideas, like you said, coming up with innovative ideas every 2-3 months, coming up with the products every 6 months. It takes a lot of brain power. So what was it that pushed you to keep going?
I think I like the human creativity, right? Creating something, and I think that's one of the reasons why early on I sort of left electrical and electronics engineering and got into computer science, because you don't need a lot of capital, right? All that you need is your
Right.
computer, and you can create something out of nothing. And I think I love that, right? whether it's writing stories, writing theater plays, films, or even products, right? I think I really love that creativity aspect. Also, I think I got a chance to work with a lot of talented, intelligent people when I was at Microsoft. So I think that is also critical, that when you are part of a group, you cannot do this alone, right? Um, you can come up with an idea, but to build upon that idea, you need other smart people with similar mind. And so
Correct.
I got that chance to, fortunately, for at least those 10 years when I was with Microsoft, to work with those smart people.
Right.
Actually, even at Unisys, there were some very smart people, and we used to, it was a lot of fun. I used to throw an idea, and then they will question it, and they will come up with their idea, and then we, started building upon each other's ideas, right?
Right.
So I think it sort of became a habit. Uh, so I think that's how it started. That's how it kind of evolved. And then I think it's exciting because every time I get an idea, I get excited, but obviously the resources are limited, right? As you
Yeah.
said, the time is limited. They're only 24
Yes.
hours, right? So then you just have to kind of keep that idea back of the mind and focus on the more priority things, right? More recent things.
Right. Okay. For my next question, like you just mentioned, writing about plays and being in theater and pursuing that. Now you've started multiple companies, you've sold them. You're of course running a company, and like you said, we have only 24 hours. So how do you make time for your other passions?
I think if you have a passion, you will find time, right? It's as simple as that, right? But how do I find time? I wish I had more time, but I don't, right? But I think it's like one of those things where a lot of times I multitask, right? Um, so when I'm going for a walk, I am thinking about something always, right? I'm thinking about a story in my mind, right? Thinking about a plot for my next film, or thinking about how to build upon a particular product idea, right? And so I sometimes I just record it on my phone, right? While I'm walking, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, I don't spend too much time just watching TV, right? So I think that's another way I find time for some of these things. And while I'm driving, same thing. In California, going, I mean, just like India, the traffic is pretty bad, right? So when I'm going for a meeting, sometimes I spend an hour, 2 hours in my car, right? And the best thing to do is think about these plots, these ideas, some creative work, right? And
Right.
so I think a lot of it is that. And then when I come back home, I just write it down, and then whenever I find time, then I start expanding on that. So mainly
Okay.
it's all multitasking.
Right. Of course. I also wanted to know, running a company, pursuing your other passions, like you said, your brain is continuously working. So is there something you do to maybe calm yourself, like to have a moment where you're thinking about nothing? Like, is that also something that you think is important, and do you do something for that?
Yeah, actually, it is very important, right? I mean, if your mind is not calm and if his mind is going in different directions, right, it's very difficult to focus on anything. And
Yeah.
I've seen people who are brilliant people with lots of ideas, but they cannot really take it to completion because they are not focused, right? So it's
Right.
extremely very good question, extremely important. I actually have almost about 15 years ago, or maybe more than that, I have completed yoga instructor course. So I am totally in yoga. I try to do yoga at least every, if not more time, at least 15 to 20 minutes every day. Definitely helps me. As soon as I get up, I do some breathing exercises. I do, even before I started today, that's what I did, right? So that
That's
definitely helps.
Yes, I can imagine. I think I have tried yoga as well. I think it's very calming. It's because it focuses so much on the breathing. I think it
Yeah.
is really important to follow it. I mean, honestly speaking, when I was a little younger, I was like, "Oh, yoga is so boring. I have to do one pose, then next pose." But now, working in IT, or even for myself, also pursuing other passions, I think it's very important to have those calm moments. And like you said, breathing is one key thing that we do in yoga. So yes, definitely that's
Yeah.
great to know that you've done a
Yeah,
course.
yeah. I was actually part of this institute called Swami Vivekananda Yoga Institute. I think they are out
Yes.
of Bangalore, SVASA,
Yes.
and they have a chapter here called Yoga Bharati. So I was active member of that, and as part of that, I attended. I think it was like a 3 or 4 month yoga instructor class, and I never taught yoga, but at least it helped me practice yoga.
Yes, absolutely. So moving on, do you think I just have two more questions? I'll not take too much
Sure,
time.
sure.
What is your next plan? Like, I'm sure that brain of yours is continuously going. So, do you have anything that you can leak to us? Any plan that you have? Maybe a product idea, maybe something for Infogen.
So definitely product ideas. I think a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, I think in our annual meeting, I guess many people from Infogen family asked me, "Are we going to get into products?" Right? And I promised them, absolutely. We are going to get into products, and we already started doing that. Right? At least in two important areas. Right? One is stud 10 games. Right? Where
Right.
we are developing our own games, and I'm hoping some of those games will take off, right? So
Right.
those will be our Infogen products. And then the other one is, Sampath, Dr. Sampath Patil. He came up with some brilliant ideas in this bot genius family using AI ML, and that technology is very close to my heart, right? So I've been sort of working with him. He's doing most of the work, but I'm pretty excited about that, right? I think next 4 or 5 years is going to be AI ML. Of course, augmented reality, virtual reality, all of these things, right? These technologies started 20, 30, 40 years ago, but again, because of the lack of hardware resources, they didn't take off, right? And this is the
Right.
time where now we have the hardware ready for some of these new technologies. So I'm pretty excited about that, right? I mean, I have gone through these three, what I call three eras of computing devices, or computer science, right? The first one, and I've been fortunate to witness all of these three. So the first one was PCs. When I started, when I was in IIT, it was mainframe computers with 16K of RAM, right? We had to write everything in machine language. Then, and they were, behind glass doors, right? We could only see
Right.
them, right? Then the PC revolution started, and it was pretty exciting. Now you have all this computing power with gigabytes of memory on your
Yeah.
desktop, right? And that's when all these companies like Microsoft started with Microsoft Word and Excel and all the PowerPoint and all these personal productivity applications, right? Then the internet came along. So I think the PCs started in 85, and then the internet sort of came along in mid 90s, and then these computers started talking to each other, and it was all about accessing information, right? And then people came up with innovative ideas in social networking like Facebook and Twitter, and e-commerce companies like Amazon and eBay. And so then that basically started a whole new industry in the computing space. And I think after about 20 years now, I think this is the time for the next revolution, and that's going to be artificial intelligence, right? So we'll see a lot of new companies on the horizon with a lot of
Right.
innovative products, and it's going to change our lifestyle.
That will be actually fun for you, right? To see the fourth generation going into
Exactly.
automation, like from where to where. Amazing.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
is great. Okay. My last question for you today is well, it's a kind of two-part question. So, like we just mentioned, automation is the future, which is true. So, two things. One is there something that you'd like to tell the youth in terms of their career, or just any suggestion that you would want to make to them, any advice that you'd want to give to them? And the part two of that is, what do you think you can tell them in terms of, the future being automation? So especially for people maybe who don't have a technology background, or who are in fields that are not related to technology, like how is it going to affect them, and what should they do?
Good question. I mean, a lot of people are scared about the future, right? Particularly people who are not in technology background, right? Even, I mean, I work with a lot of actors and writers in Hollywood, and you might have heard that the union, they went on strike because they are scared
Yeah.
of artificial intelligence, right? Uh, so it's going to happen. You can't stop it, right? Any technological advance, right? You cannot stop that, right?
Right.
But I think it's all going to be good. So I think my advice is the times are exciting. I mean, particularly for technology people, I would say make it your hobby, right? Start taking interest in technology. It's a fun thing. It's one of those things where, once you start taking interest in that, you will be excited. It's kind of like uh, every week when you keep your eyes open, look at what's happening, right, in the not just your work but outside of your work, what's going on in that space. And a lot of people are coming out with new ideas, new products, and you will be excited. And then once you start doing that, you'll have your own ideas, right?
Right.
So start taking interest in where the technology is headed. Yeah, of course, you have to do your project, you have to do your work, but outside of that, in general, where the space is headed, right? What others are doing. If you start taking interest, pretty soon, you'll find out that uh, I mean, you'll start having fun in what you do, right?
Right.
For non-technical people, again, what I'm saying is this is all where it is headed. It automation is actually the non-technical people will start using technology. They don't have to be programmers. They don't have to be developers,
Right.
right? I mean, if you look at it, when internet started and this social networking app started, right? Yes, they were developed by technical people, but then a lot of people who were not using computers, right?
Right.
They started using computers, right?
Right.
I mean, before PCs, not too many people, or even after PCs, people were not using computers. Then
Right.
people started using computers with Word and Excel, right? And then when internet came along, a lot more people started using computers because of the internet browsers, because of the social networking apps, things like that, right? So for non-technical people, the same thing, right? With these advances in automation and artificial intelligence, it will become so easy for them that they will start using computers to get information, right? To find out what's
Right.
happening around them, right? I mean, another example is um people used to get news using either newspapers,
Yes.
right? Everyone used to wait for a newspaper in the morning,
Right.
right? And then TV channels, right? But now, anytime, it's like information at your fingertips. They can just go on their mobile phone and find out what's going on, right?
Yes.
So I think for non-technical people, I think that's what is going to happen. I think because of this automation, more people will start using computers. Chat GPT is already happening. I see some people like coming up with poems and stories, and then they build upon those, right? So I think it'll happen. They will also have, because of automation, people will have more leisure time. When they have more leisure time, I think going back to your question, right? How do I find time to do other things? Now, with
Right.
this automation and AI, everybody will have more time. And when they have more time, they will have more time to work on their hobbies, to work on other creative things.
True. Actually, that is very well put. That makes complete sense to me. And thinking about what you just said, I mean, I myself am from a very non-technical background. I was into dancing. So, coming from dancing into IT, my first thing was making a good friendship with Excel and Word, which was first hurdle. And now, in fact, after joining Infogen, I have started learning how to incorporate automation into Excel. So now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, completely, like from where to where, and it is just going to take us ahead. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, and since you mentioned dancing, I mean, pretty soon we'll have a AI product where you can actually describe what a particular scene or a particular plot, and it'll come up with a choreography, and you can take that choreography. So it'll do half of the work, right? It's not going to
Right.
replace humans,
Of
but then
course.
you'll have a starting point and you can build upon it, right? So
Right.
it'll save a lot of time.
That will be very interesting. Now I'm waiting for that to happen because that will be the first thing I do. Choreograph on AI. That is very interesting. It has been absolutely informative and so much fun listening to you. I don't want to stop asking you questions, but I can't take too much of your time. So thank you so much, Sanjeev, for joining this episode and for enlightening us with so much information. It has been a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Priyanka. It was my pleasure. And thanks for starting this initiative and giving me a chance to be on your first podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev, and have a really good day.
Yeah, thank you.